Perception versus reality. It is a big problem in politics because when people perceive things to be bad, that is their general assumption. And then you have the reality of the situation where, these things then, well, they turn out not to be, well, quite true. And local councils are ultimately always at this accusation. You can go on any local Facebook group, have a look at any post of someone complaining about their local council, and you can read all the posts. The perception of most local councils is that they are terrible, like the councillors are all corrupt and on the take, and that they're absolutely disastrous. The reality is, of course, that many councils throughout the UK are absolutely run incredibly well by people who actually care about what goes on in their local community. And that even includes Tories, by the way. I know, but as I've always said, give credit where credit is due. And the reality, of course, means that because people have this awful perception of local councils, well, they don't turn out to vote. This is what won Reform a lot of seats last time around. When you have such a low turnout as around 30% nationally, then yeah, of course Farage and his gaggle are going to do quite well because Farage, as I've always said, has a big, large, motivated block of voters to go out and vote. That is what he does. What really needs to happen is all parties really need to get out and do a proper pavement pounding campaign that gets people out to vote and motivates people to get out to vote. I think that is something that all parties should be focusing on in the run up to the next election in May. But today we're going to have go from talking about the local government to national, because there is a perception that this current Labour government isn't doing very well, and that is the perception. The reality, however, is something very, very different, and that in reality, this government really isn't doing that bad compared to the perception that they are absolutely awful and terrible. But as they said. Anyway, before we go on into this, please do, of course, remember to click on the like, share, and, of course, the subscribe button down below. There are links, of course, to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and, of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership down below as well. And, of course, don't forget to click the like, share, and, of course, the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. And, of course, ring the bell as well so you get notifications of when we drop a new video or when we go live. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. Right. Let's go on into this from the East Anglian Byline Times. Things are not really that bad. Balancing the government's books. So, most Labour Party supporters are motivated by two things: outrage at injustice and a vision of a better world. But while Keir Starmer, of course, shares the first, he seems to lack the second. He is a lawyer, and lawyers fix problems. They work with the world as it is, dealing with individual issues, not visions of the future. As his biographer, Tom Baldwin, has said, he is passionate about injustice, but uncomfortable with the vision thing. Labour has a very long tradition of preferring heroic defeat to grubby compromise. His lawyer drive now to find solutions that work is, of course, disappoints the more messianic members. The more people feel that our current institutions are, of course, not coping with the growing pile of problems, many of those who voted Labour last year, of course, hoped for radical change, not tinkering with the machine, especially when the fixes are very small, incremental, and slow. But Starmer's instincts to correct the imperfections of existing institutions rather than overthrow them is now an imitation that now shows in his polling. People are, of course, disappointed by the most modest gestures over genocide in Gaza when they want heroic outrage. They're, of course, shocked that he tolerates the economic orthodoxy when it tells him that we cannot afford to abolish the two-child cap on benefits. So, as a politician, he has severe limitations, and speculation is, of course, growing that this now may prove fatal for him and perhaps even for the party. The failure of course communications, which we've always talked about, very true. They have a very poor communications machine, which is again always infuriating on that. Has of course allowed a very hostile media to flood the public awareness with a very few but bad, not catastrophic decisions. So a few relatively minor unpopular decisions have become to now characterize the whole government. The decision, of course, to abolish the winter fuel payment may have now been an attempt to improve the targeting on fuel support for those in greatest need. But when it was now seen as a vindictive penny pinching attack on all pensioners, again, very true. This is what I constantly tried to say. This whole thing was targeted to give the winter fuel payment to those who needed it most. And then that's how it became this attack on all pensioners that, oh, this is just, needless penny pinching, when it wasn't. The whole thing was to aim to be a big targeted support for for the least well-off pensioners. But there you go. And of course, many of the criticisms are, of course, not even about the active decisions or even broken promises about the disappointed hopes. The two-child benefit cap inflicts suffering on many families and increases child poverty, but Labour never promised to abolish it. And the government will, of course, claim that the dire legacy of previous governments have now forced them into uncomfortable decisions. In the rational world, the balance sheet of the real world achievements and failures set aside weigh, of course, the difference. But politics is, of course, not a rational business. Never true words were spoken on that. And perception matters. Nevertheless, it is worth cataloguing all the achievements because there have been some. And those on the left who criticize his government might actually want to consider which of these would have happened if the Conservatives had held on to power last year. This is what we've been saying for so long. And I said this to a lot of people prior in the elections at the end of last year. Be careful of people who, under the previous Tory government, were going, the government is bad, the government is bad, the government is bad, the government is bad, got a new government, and now they've just gone, the government is bad, the government is bad, the government is bad, the government is bad. Because those people are not giving this current government, I think, the fair shake it deserves. This has always been my thing. When I had my, again, conversation with Kevin not too long ago, Kevin gave up a lot of points when I said, oh, what about this? What about this? I said, oh, yeah, I'll grant you that. But he only wanted to talk about the negative. And then somehow it was only the negatives that mattered in that conversation. In the reality, there were very few negatives he was bringing up. He was really only focusing on one or two, three negatives on that. Obviously, the winter fuel, the Gaza situation, very much so. And that tended to be really it. But whenever I brought up the positives, he quickly, again, if you could go watch the conversation yourself, he just hand waved it away. And when I brought up the positives again, one of the things I did actually prepare for that was quick quotes you could actually say in response to some of that stuff. When I started bringing those up and rattling those off, he just went, yeah, I'll give you that, whatever. There's a lot of people on the left who I think are very, very just dismissive of things that this government is doing and not giving it generally actual proper shake when it comes to this. So, Full Fact website has now been tracking government commitments, including those, of course, of last year's election manifesto and other things, of course, made since then. They have identified over 76 key pledges and have been monitoring the performance on each. 15 are now shown as active, 16 are on track, 20 are now in progress, and 16 are wait and see. And only 9 are not kept, off track, or even disputed. Of course, events do overtake any government, and they failed to do many of the things that were now not in their original plans. However, examining the achievement against promises at least is one of important measure, and we will now all list them below. Full Fact provides a very detailed explanation of how each one was arrived at. The analysis, of course, show that 2/3 of Labour's promises are now being kept. It does also not incur other achievements, which are, of course, not promised, but which will still have a major impact on millions of people, including raising the minimum wage or maintaining the triple lock on the state pension. This is not an insignificant body of achievement, but some of those will, of course, certainly make an impact on most people's lives rather than the negatives, which have received the most media attention. But in the end, most people, of course, pay little attention to politics. Again, very, very true. it does very, very feel very often like most of us, when you talk to anyone who does this as well, this is why I'm really thankful to be in the Labour politics group. It does feel like we are shouting into the void very, very often. Especially when I do all this stuff about reform, what's going on these local councils, it does that very, very much just feel like shouting into the void. Very, very much so. But in the end, but the end, of course, most people pay little attention to politics. Most people do not systematically weigh up the costs and benefits. If they did, Keir Starmer would look a lot more secure, but often they don't. So here's all this on the economy achieved. End the use of offshore trusts and to avoid inheritance tax, abolish the non-dom status, submit all fiscal plans to the independent budget of obvious responsibility, establish a national wealth fund. All achieved, on track. No increase to VAT, no increase to income tax, cap corporation tax at 25%, balance the budget to reduce the debt in 5 years, legislate to improvement to make work pay plan. In progress, currently raising living standards every part of the UK, achieved now the highest economic growth in the G7. So again, on progress. So here's on not kept, off track, or disputed. Provide 7.3 billion now to capitalize the new wealth fund. Reduced the sum allocated. Disputed. Whether, of course, raising the employer's national insurance is really a tax on working people is, of course, debatable. Wait and see. Deliver the productivity and growth in every part of the country. Replace business rates with now a fairer system. Again, I think business rates is a tricky subject. That's how most councils, bear in mind, for the past 14 years have been kept afloat. Business rates is something that does need looking at, but what do you replace it with is a very tricky system. So crime police and justice achieved review of sentencing. Excellent, great, on track. Scrap effective immunity for shoplifting. Create a new offence for assaulting shop workers. Create respect orders to now ban persistent offenders now from town centres. In progress. The neighbourhood policing guarantee, the Hillsborough law, that's coming in soon. That would actually probably, I think, be on track probably there, because that's being heard, I think, this week, next week, I think it is, can't remember now. The Young Footage program to stop people now being joined to crime. That's, again, I think, a good program to be doing, to be honest, is all. Raise confidence again in the police. Not kept, off track, and disputed on this. Raise confidence in the criminal justice system. Ensure that every young person caught with a knife will be referred to now the youth offending team and receive a mandatory plan with penalties now for a breach. Again, we'll see what happens. The wait and see part. Reverse, of course, the Conservative decision to now downgrade the monitoring of anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate, halve violent crime. Again, we'll see. Health and social care achieved. 2 million extra appointments a year. On track. Ensure that the next generation will never legally buy cigarettes. Currently in progress. Recruit 85,000 more nurses and staff during its first term. Restore and return to the NHS to promote performance standards. Double the numbers of scanners in each to now catch cancer earlier. Over 7,000 now additional dental appointments. Currently not kept, off track, or even disputed. Trains 1,000 more of GPs. Train 1,000 of more midwives. Wait and see. Create a national care service, which I think will be very interesting. If they do create a national care service, I think that will be something very, very interesting. I think that will be very, very highly impactful, considering we are looking at a big increase in our old age population. Maybe creating a similar model to the NHS, to like the National Care Service, might actually be a really good idea. But we'll see if this, of course, happens. Anyway, migration achieved. Create a new border security command center. Negotiate now additional return agreements. End the Rwanda deportation scheme. Again, all achieved. In progress. A new returns and enforcement unit with over 1,000 staff to try and fast track removals now to safe countries. Not kept, off track, and disputed. End the use of asylum hotels. Currently wait and see. Reduce net migration. Increase the number of safe countries failed asylum seekers can be returned to. Democracy. Currently on track. Again, I think they've done some really good work in this sector that I think does not get brought up enough. Reform voter ID rules. Give 16 to 18-year-olds now a vote, which, again, I think is fantastic. But they've got to, vote on that, because trust me, if another administration gets in, let's say Reform or the Conservatives, they will just remove that instantly. Remove the hereditary peers from the House of Lords. Excellent, good, about time. Create an independent ethics and integrity commission to ensure probity in government. Again, really good that they've actually done that, considering what we saw go on during the previous Conservative administration. Wait and see. Introduce a retirement age of 80 to the House of Lords. Again, I hope that does get in, because that will at least help sort out the backlog in the House of Lords and reduce the numbers in there. That's for sure. Introduce now a petition requirement for members of the House of Lords. Again, I do agree that should be there on that. Education achieved. End the VAT exemption for business rates relief now for private schools. Again, I think that's very, very good, to be honest. On track. Free breakfast clubs. Again, people underestimate and just think, oh, free breakfast clubs, but they've proven to be really effective in how they do it. Recruit 65,000 more teachers for key subjects. Limited branded school kit. Again, I think that's good as well. Wait and see. Ensure that 75% of 5-year-olds now are school ready. Again, that's probably a long-term one on that one. Over on energy, achieved. Create the Great British Energy. Great. Currently on track. Ban new coal licenses. Ban new oil and gas licenses. In progress. Capitalize on British green energy with over 8.3 billion. Currently, again, in progress. We'll see if that happens. Wait and see. The Energy Independence Act. Again, we'll see what happens when this act comes in, but I think that will be very, very important, honestly. I think this is very much a key thing that will go into the whole Great British Energy thing. We know that we need to really do more on this. Reason why energy prices are still so high, because the Conservatives went all in on gas. What happened? Well, the Ukraine war happened. Of course, where did we get all our gas from? Most of it was from Russia. We are, of course, gone to different sources, but again, it's still not enough to reduce the need for gas, because guess what? When the whole thing in the Ukraine war went off, the price of gas rose up dramatically on that one. So this is something that we do need to have a look at our energy independence on this one. Currently achieved for culture and society. Achieved a football governance bill, the regulator now to ensure sustainability of clubs. Currently in progress. Ban trans conversion practices. New Race and Equality Act. Wait and see. Modernize the gender recognition law. Again, we'll see what happens on all that. Defense. Defense review. Excellent. Good. Tick. Plan to reach 2.5% of GDP on defense. Again, that can be very good, because that 2.5 defense, that on defense, you can actually put into infrastructure. Because guess what? Counts defense. Currently in progress. Bring forward the 2.5% target now to 2027. Housing. Currently achieved. Update the national planning framework, including restoring mandatory targets. Again, I think that's very good. Abolish. Currently on track. Abolish no-fault evictions. Again, great. We'll see that probably in the next couple of weeks for that new bill. Not kept, off track, and currently disputed. Of course, build 1.5 million homes by 2029. Will they be able to do that? Who knows? I doubt maybe they will be able to achieve that target, but I think being able to be either close or at least achieving more than the last government did in the last 14 years, that is still a pretty good achievement. But of course, as we've said before, we can't just build our way out of this crisis. More needs to be done on that. Foreign policy. Not kept, off track, and currently disputed. Restore development spending to 0.7% as soon as fiscal circumstances allow. Wait and see. Recognize Palestinian state as a step towards the two-state solution. Well, guess what? That's just happened. So achieved. Environment currently in progress. Ban trail hunting. Great. Wait and see. Halve sewage pollution by 2030. We'll see if they can do that. Phase out new internal combustion cars by 2030. Again, we'll see if they can do that. Transport currently in progress. Fix over 1 million potholes every year. We'll see if they can achieve that. Work and benefits currently. Wait and see. Review the universal credit to make work pay and trying to tackle poverty. Again, we'll see what happens when they try and sort of do that, and what happens in the bill on that when that comes through. But so far, honestly, as I keep on saying, they are not that bad. They are not that bad. There's a lot of perception that currently this government is awful, that it is bad. And yes, I will admit they've made some mistakes. But overall, they aren't doing that bad. And I think a lot of people are not giving, I think especially on the left, are not giving this government the fair credit it deserves in some of these areas. Generally, I really do think that. So, as always, let me know what you think, as always, down below. And of course, don't forget to click the like and share button. And of course, we'll see you all next time.